Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is everyone's favorite series where I talk about geography and the world and stuff. And today I want to talk about one of the most interesting parts of geography, which has been a while since we spoke about on the channel, but it is borders. So as I've said before, the reason borders fascinate me so much is because I live on an island where there are no physical land borders where you just cross magically into another country, just, as if it's on land, like, oh yeah, I just walked across the street and I'm in a different country. That fascinates me so much, and it really fascinates me that Germany, this country over here, has 9 separate borders, which means they have all these different border crossing points of all these countries around them. That's such a, headache to think about even conceptually, and then you realize that each of those borders has been drawn over hundreds of years and they exist in really weird places. Like a straight line border you can just about conceptualize, but a border along like a natural, like a border like a mountain range or a river almost just about makes sense. But when they're in the case of Germany, almost all these borders are kind of artificial for the most part, and they're just like, oh yeah, we have to draw it that way. So Germany has some of the weirdest borders, and as a consequence, Germany's one of the weirdest shaped countries, and I wanted to go through each of Germany's 9 borders with each of the 9 countries around it and talk a little bit about them in today's video. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. Let's get straight into it. So again, because there's so many fascinating like enclaves, exclaves, weird geography mishaps and like just confusion things you don't get anywhere else in the world. But let's go straight into the German Netherlands border. It's a fairly simple one. It's really in and out. You can see right here, it's like in, out, in, out, in, out. It's a bit all over the place. And also it begins all the way up here on this island. Germany did really well in that Borkum is a part of Germany and not the Netherlands. Again, so the border looks like it's like going evenly there, but it cuts a little bit around in Germany's favor, so good job, I guess. And also you can see right here, the exact opposite thing happens in the Netherlands with this little village over here belonging to the Netherlands, because Dutch people live there, so you don't want it to be a part of Germany anyway. So yeah, this is a Dutch village, and you might think this is an entirely fine reason to like make the border go out. I mean, it looks really weird, but that's a fine thing. But if you actually look right here, the motorway, so this is a Dutch motorway that turns into a German autobahn. The motorway is entirely in the Netherlands. However, if you look at the little service station on the side here, that's actually in Germany, and there's a police station from Germany too. This is a German chain of stuff. There's a German chain of food right there, which means what you can actually do is you can, I don't think that's a German chain there, but my point being is you can actually turn off this motorway, which by the way, you're in a Dutch motorway just over here until you take a right turn, and then you enter Germany. You are now in Deutschland, and their laws apply to you. While you fill up your gas, you're going to get a different price here than you would at a Dutch thing, because you're in Lower Saxony and you're not in Netherlands anymore. I think that's fascinating, and maybe you might agree, but yeah, basically just a weird little point going out like that. And again, the rest of their border is kind of arbitrary. It's one of the more recently redrawn borders, because at the end of World War II, the Dutch were really upset that they got invaded despite being fairly neutral, so they're like, give us some land, Germany, and they took some land, but then the Germans bought it back in 1966. So this is only a 50-year-old border, like, to have it finally finalized in its exact form, and it's really weird to resolve that, just like towns going one way, towns going the other, and at least this very strange situation with just a non-stop array of like ins and outs and weird stuff that doesn't necessarily make too much sense, but clearly has some tactical purpose. And that includes this place right here. So this is Maastricht. Again, there's a famous treaty from here, so you might recognize the name of that. It's just this little bit of the Netherlands, which is like sandwiched in between Germany and Belgium. Speaking of being sandwiched in between Germany and Belgium, there is actually this fun try point right here. It's the Aachen try point between Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. So this is where all 3 countries meet. There are a surprising number of these in the world, and it's one of the few ones you can visit pretty easily. So again, I went there. You might recognize if you've been subscribed to the channel for a long time. I did a video. It was like 7 fun facts about Germany, maybe, but I made a video here at the try point. You can see just over, it's in the distance somewhere, but oh, there it is. It's just over there. You can barely see it, but it's a point where you can literally step across from Germany to Belgium to the Netherlands, because they're all in the Schengen area. It doesn't, like, there's no border checking points, but still, it's crazy that there's a try point border you can visit. It's perhaps the easiest one to visit in the world, because you just have to go from Aachen on a bus, do a bit of a walk, and then there's a little labyrinth for you to play around with too. So yeah, there you go, one of the first try points, and that brings us nicely into the second border that Germany has, which is Germany and the Belgium's border. So again, you might be like, well, I mean, that gas station thing's interesting, but this next thing is like the next weird level. So Germany-Belgium's border is fairly, it's about the same as the Netherlands, until you realize that, wait, this bit here just belongs to Germany, and I couldn't find any explanation of this online, like, why is that the case? And you might think, oh yeah, well, something from Germany exists there. But no, there's no German village. There's a little road, which, again, it does it crosses over through Germany for some reason. It's weird. And if you look on Google Maps, you can see it's just a forest. Germany just owns this random bit of forest that would otherwise always be Belgian, and there's just no questions raised about that apparently. I don't get it, but that's a thing that exists right there. And then also you can see it goes weirdly out here too. But basically, German-Belgian border is pretty normal until you get to this point right here. So this is called the Vennbahn, or Vennbahnweg in Belgian, but this is basically a little bit of pathway which stretches between Germany and itself, and basically creates German exclaves. So basically, as you can see right here, this part of Germany is separated from this part of Germany by a stretch this big. You can see just how small it is. In fact, let's give you the exact distance, like show you on screen. It is 35 meters across. A little bit of Belgium separates Germany from itself for about 7 or 8 kilometers, as you can see right here. It's pretty insane that that exists that way, and you might think, oh, that makes sense because there's a train running through there, or like a road or something. But no, that's not the case anymore. So at one point there was a train running through there, and it was like a Prussian State Railways train. So it, it went through there and did its business. And because the Belgians took it over, but the Germans wanted their land, they came to a compromise essentially where Belgium could keep the railway and keep it being on their territory, and Germany would keep the land around it. And even though they got rid of the train service in about 2001, so 16 years ago, even though they got rid of the train service 16 years ago, they've kept the border as it was then, and at least this very bizarre situation where Germany has these practical exclaves. Again, look at the size of these things. It's one house, which is just on the wrong side of the border, because of this weird situation where, again, the railway belonged to Belgium, and therefore their country kept the land that it was on. But now it's a nice little pathway where if you don't want to go to Germany, you can walk through it and around it and stuff, and I think that's kind of weird, but it's a thing you can do. So that's the Vennbahn, the border between Germany and Belgium. It just has so many weird bits. Look at this. There's so many exclaves of Germany just because of this one thing where you have to like cross a road to get back. You have to temporarily go into Belgium just to go back to Germany, and it's not a big problem because they're on friendly terms, but it's a really weird international border situation. It's one of the weirdest in the world. Look at this, like it's one of the weirdest in the world, and it's something I figured I'd mention just here. So yeah, with that said, let's go. Also, by the way, the border gets to its closest point just over here. A lot of places mistakenly say this is a again, it's a point where it closes the gap, but it's a 9-meter gap. In fact, wait, it's a 7-meter gap between Germany and Germany again, which is, it's insane, but it gets better than that later, don't worry. So yeah, that's the German-Belgian border. I can't really like wow you more than that, besides being like, wow, look, it follows a road pretty closely. The Germans built a road just on their side of the border. Isn't that nice of them? Until you reach the tri-point border of Germany, Belgium, and Luxembourg. So, Germany, Belgium, and Luxembourg, found just over here. So this is a tri-point border of no particular interest. Like, it's in a river, so you can't go visit it. Although if you wanted to swim in the river, you could swim from one side to the other. I'm just saying, it's a thing you could do. The Germany-Luxembourg border is one of the easiest ones to like look at and say, well, that's a thing. I mean, sometimes it goes on the wrong side of the riverbank, but it follows the river I don't know how you say that, but it follows the river pretty, consistently, as you can see. Besides a few points, but like, if you look at it mostly, it follows the river really, really consistently until it reaches this point here, where, as you can see, it just decides, actually, Luxembourg, we can have that side of the river too. And then eventually, if you follow it all the way down, it actually reaches the village of Schengen eventually. So the Schengen village is famous because it's the birthplace of the Schengen Treaty. The Schengen Treaty created the Schengen area, which is the reason that if you ever go to Europe, or if you're in Europe, you never have to cross a border from any of these countries to any of the other ones, because they're all inside the same border area. If you visit Switzerland and you're not from the European area, you'll get a Schengen visa. If you visit France, you'll get a Schengen visa. It's all one essentially bordered area, and in some ways a country, you can argue, but that was all formed right here, where diplomats from France, Luxembourg, and European diplomats, but they all went on a boat into the tri-point border, and they signed the treaty with a little bit of the boat on one part of the boat being on each side of the border. And I thought that was a nice little detail. They signed the treaty in the little village of Schengen, and that made the Schengen Treaty. So personally, I would have picked like a border, like one that you could visit on land, but they wanted a boat, so they did it in Schengen. So the German-France border is like, ooh, yeah, that's it's actually surprisingly unnotable. Like this part of France right here was traditionally like exchanging hands back between France and Germany. So there's a particularly, I think it's the village of Colmar, or the town of Colmar. They speak a surprising amount of they speak a surprising dialect of French that sounds a lot like German, but you can't understand it supposedly. They speak this really weird, like crossover where it's like at some point there were clearly Germans there, but they turned into French people, but weirdly. And yeah, that's a fun fact you might not have known. And yeah, for the most part, the border between France and Germany, it's fairly easy going now. They haven't invaded each other in like at least 60 years last time I checked. So that's all you need at least 70 years, I guess, since I last checked. So that's all you need to know. It follows the Rhine River too, by the way, and that seems seems to keep things just about under control. Again, nice easy border until you reach Switzerland. So the Switzerland border, the Switzerland, French, and German border, the point where all three of those convene, is actually quite interesting because it happens near the town of the city. It's actually a full-on, like, it's one of the largest cities in Switzerland, near the city of Basel, which means that, as you can see, one side the river's in France, then there's some Germany over here, then there's some Switzerland over there, and at this point, if you were in a boat, then officially you'd be in all three countries, which is a fun fact. So Switzerland's part of the Schengen Treaty, but they have some extra border enforcement, so here you actually do sometimes go through some border checkpoints. They just have to look at your passport, go, oh, okay, that's fine, and then they can do that officially, because I'm not entirely sure how their, like, treaties work, but that's how it works out, let me just tell you that much. And yeah, just bear in mind that that's, as you can see, the Switzerland border right here, and it's kind of interesting because the airport over here, this is Europort Basel Mulhouse Freiburg, it's actually an airport for all three countries, because the Basel metropolitan area, like, so the Basel, you know, like, S-Bahn and transport network actually goes into France, it goes into Germany, it goes, yeah, again, it's a tri-country network, and their airport is actually for all three countries. It's a, you know, it's an airport which mostly serves Switzerland and Germany, which is located in France. And I think that's a cool fact, and you might end up going there if you ever fly to Basel Airport. It's a very cheap airport to go to, which is something I quite like in airports. So there you go, fun fact. It serves like low-cost airlines, and that is the Euro Airport Basel Mulhouse Freiburg, because it's for Basel, it's for Mulhouse, and it's for Freiburg, which is all the way up there if I'm not mistaken, which isn't really a good airport for that, but still, it's technically a border airport. So with that said, as you can see, the Rhine River is actually used for Germany-Switzerland's border, like 4 separate times. Again, this is the fun one in my opinion. This is where things just go off the rails, because Germany and German-Switzerland have like a fairly close-ish relationship. I don't want to say it's like perfectly close, but they had a close-ish relationship over the, you know, deep history of like hundreds to thousands of years. Well, Switzerland hasn't been around for thousands of years. But my point being is they have a closest relationship because they were both German. You should understand the point, because this is German Switzerland, this is Germany. So the Rhine River is the border point, and then there's just some weird juts in and out. So as you can see, this belongs to Switzerland. It just like stops following the Rhine River, goes back onto the Rhine River, follows it really closely, then goes back into Switzerland where they just take all of this, then goes back along the Rhine River, then goes into this weird like, again, as you can see right here, this is actually another German enclave or exclave. So it's a part of Germany. It's surrounded entirely by Switzerland. And the weird thing about this, it's Busingam on Huckreim, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry for butchering your town name if you live here, but basically, this is a German German town which exists inside, you know, Switzerland, and basically because it's inside Switzerland and there's no practical way to get to Germany without having to drive through Switzerland, there's a lot of really weird, like, extra rules that apply here, such as the fact that, like, Swiss police have to outnumber the local police by, like, some amount. The rules that are followed here are mostly Swiss laws. Again, it's technically German laws, but, like, the Swiss police somewhat enforce them. They use the Swiss currency, the Swiss franc, instead of the euro here. It's inside the Swiss customs area, so you have to get customs checked theoretically when you go here. Basically, it's a village of just, it's a town of 1,419 people, which is just, it causes a whole bunch of issues between Germany and Switzerland, and Germany's holding on to it. And they even actually, the funny thing is they had a referendum here on like going back and, you know, being owned by Switzerland, and I think the people even voted yes, but then, you know, Switzerland were like, we have nothing to offer you in return to Germany, so sorry about that. And I just think that's kind of funny. It's just like, you know what, the countries, they just agree it's how it is, and they just like work around it. And this is the mess of a border they have between Germany and Switzerland. So also kind of fascinating to me is the fact that going through this area, so again, it like cuts through this like mess of a place. There is actually a railway, so it's actually again, it's Zurich's S-Bahn. So their S-Bahn, it's not quite the equivalent of like this New York subway or the London Underground or the Moscow Metro, whatever metro system you're picturing, because S-Bahn's a little bit different. It's like regional railways, but they're like, you know, again, they're like, their commuter railways for Zurich actually go through Switzerland and then into Germany and then back into Switzerland and then back into Germany. If I'm not mistaken, they end just over here somewhere. It's hard to find the exact point, but as you can see, this is a Zurich S-Bahn train. Again, they go to and from Zurich on like a 15-minute interval or something, and it goes through Switzerland, into Germany, into Switzerland, and back into Germany again. And that's a fun fact you might not have known. And yeah, with that said, let's move on to that from the Germany-Swiss-Austrian border, so the border between those three countries. And again, you might think this must be the easiest tri-point in the world, but it's actually one of the most confusing borders in the world. What if I said that three countries could not agree on where their border was, and you'd be like, holy heck, that's gonna cause some wars or something. But no, it's Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and they have this huge lake. It's Lake Constance, or it's called the Bodensee here on the map, but it's called Lake Constance, and it's this huge lake over here. And basically, Switzerland. So there's 3 countries, as you can see. Here is where the Germany-Austria border is. Here's the Austria-Switzerland border, and here is the German-Switzerland border. So you might think that just over here, if we like mark a magic point, that would be the tri-point border, and that's just done with, right? This is Switzerland's lake, and that's Austria's lake, and that's Germany's lake. But actually, Switzerland agrees. Switzerland thinks this, like, clearly Switzerland must have clearly marked boundaries. But the thing is even though that's agreed on by Switzerland, Austria thinks this is a condominium. A condominium is roughly a country. Basically the lake would be owned by all 3 countries simultaneously, as like like a nature thing, like they're not going to interfere with it. And then Germany has this ambiguous stance, which changes from time to time, where they're like, how about we just decide it on a case-by-case basis? So all 3 countries have different opinions about what this lake means to them, and as a result, it's one of the few points on Earth where there should be a border, but all 3 countries just go, we can't decide, sorry. And I think that's fascinating. And yeah, that's something that you might not have known. In fact, I had a comment, I mentioned this in a previous video. Someone was like, I did not believe you on that, Toycat. Why would you make up a story? But I looked it up, and it's true. And if you don't believe that, because again, it sounds ridiculous, I wouldn't believe someone if they told me. Look it up if you want to. Lake Constance, the borders are ambiguous, not agreed by the 3 countries, and it's just not an issue, because it's Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and they get along these days, as it turns out. So, yeah. Also, by the way, this lake, the, ambiguous lake border, is larger than Liechtenstein just over here, and, I'm just saying, that's kind of impressive, that, like... But anyway, my point being, let's move on from the Germany-Switzerland border to the Germany-Austria border. So this border is fascinating because someone, again, wrote me a comment once, and it's a fairly widely known fact that Germany and Austria share a quad point border. Like, again, because there's no quad point borders in the world. However, someone said, technically there's an ABAB border in terms of like Austria, Germany, Germany. And as you can see over here, there is a quad point border, is there not? Because this is Austria, this is Austria, this is Germany, this is Germany. Well, what if I said this is one of the thinnest points between 2 borders in the world? If I could check this somehow, I'd be sure it is, but again, I can't check it. I haven't checked every border in the world to make sure, but I'm 95% certain, I'd make a full video if I was 100%, that this is the thinnest point between 2 borders in the world. This is Germany, and it's a 3-meter gap if I'm not mistaken. Let's show you the exact gap. It is a 4.5-meter gap between Germany and Germany again. So you can technically cross from this village in... It's a fairly sized little part of Austria, but you can cross from this little part of Austria to the rest of Austria across a 5-meter gap. If you are wider than 5 meters, or your car is, you couldn't drive a car because it's a mountain, but if your vehicle of whatever form or your goat is more than 5 meters wide, I don't know how you get a 5-meter gap. My point being is you could like accidentally cross through Germany. If you're more than 5 meters wide, or like what you're carrying is more than 5 meters wide, it cannot cross from Austria into Germany, into Austria again, which I just find to be a cool little fact. Also, most people from Austria in this part here, because it's a ski resort, would realistically drive anyway. You're not going to walk up the mountain every time, but it's kind of cool in my opinion that there is a quad point, but not quite a quad point. It just looks like a quad point till you get right here. Border between Germany and Austria. So, yeah, the rest of the border is fairly tame as a result. There's actually a practical exclave of Austria inside Germany. So, as you can see right here, we've got, I believe it's just over here. So yeah, as you can see, this is Germany, this part going up to here. The borders between Germany and Austria like are really kind of like, oh yeah, those mountains, because basically the Germany-Austria border had to be decided upon when the German states came together, and then they left Austria out for reasons. Long story. Not entirely certain of myself, but it means that Mittelburg over here is a practical exclave of Austria, because although it's on their side of the mountain kind of thing, it actually is not connected to the rest of Austria by any land route. Instead, you have to drive all the way around into Germany and then back into Austria. So, again, fun little fact, might not have known, sucks to be in Mittelburg, but they have nice ski resorts, so probably, you know, about equalizes there. So, moving on from that, oops, here is my new tab, as you can see, Flickr, Reddit, AliExpress, all the good stuff. So, moving on from that, let's talk about the Germany-Austria Czech border. This is the other tri-point you can visit. Again, I've never been here, but there's a little mark point, and it's also, it's got a 4.6 star review. So that's nice, I guess, and you could go visit the tri-point between these 3 countries. And again, there's a little marking point there if you want to go see it. As you can see, on this side, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. So this is Germany on this side. That would be Austria on that side, and that would be the Czech Republic on the other side. And they've got like a tri-point memorial. Again, there's no like official land. You can't sit. Sorry, no like line on the board on the line on the land. You can just kind of sit like that. So there you go, tri-point border. Germany and Czechia's border. Again, it's like, oh yeah. So that kind of causes wars if we talk about it too much. So I'll just say it follows like again, not really too much for logical line. You see it goes really jittery in and out here, like, not even for, like, logical things, like this road belongs to Germany, and then it just goes in and out like crazy. Again, this is a really thin point between two borders. Germany has a ridiculous number of those, where, like, this river belongs to Czechia, and they're not doing anything with it. Again, if you don't believe that, like, here you can see, this is officially Czechian property, and what are they doing with it? I'm not really certain, but it exists, and that's nice, I guess. So, yeah, that's their border for the most part. Goes really zigzag in and out. I'd love to tell you more about it, but there's no, like, fascinating little parts of it. It's just, like, this was how the border was agreed, and because, you know, Germans on one side, Czechians on the other, or, like, Bohemia is technically the part of Czechia. But anyway, let's just agree to be like, okay, pretty weird border, loads of weird points, and then finally, you reach the Germany, Czechia, and Poland border, which is again in a river. Again, there was only 2 visitable points because they're all in rivers otherwise. And the Germany-Poland border is one that's really fascinating to me because I didn't know this until recently. But this is, it's called the Oder-Neisse border. So it's because it follows roughly the river Oder, if I'm not mistaken. And then basically, it's named after that because of the geographical land features. As you can see, the Oder River. There's a second Frankfurt, which isn't so widely known, called Frankfurt and Oder, which means on the Oder, because it's on the Oder River, because this is the border between Germany and Poland. Fun fact. And then there's also the Neisse River. But my point being is that is how they determined the border between Germany and Poland. But Germany really, really doesn't like this border, and they only had to accept it when Germany reunified, very begrudgingly. And the reasons for that, I'll try and say it fast, but I found this fascinating, is because Germany used to own pretty much all the way up to there. Like, even some of Lithuania was German. Like, Clypedia, over here, this was a German-filled settlement. And even this part of Russia and Europe used to be German. It used to be, oh, I've forgotten the name, but it was part of, like, the Far East Prussian thing. And, yeah, basically all of this used to be Germany, and because of lots of things Germany did, they lost the land, and they actually forcibly resettled the Germans out there. So a lot of what is modern-day Poland was essentially German lands before, and they forced the Germans out there. And again, I hope that's not a controversial retelling, but that's how it is, because as soon as World War II was over, they're like, well, we're not going to have any repetition of, like, Germans claiming their land because Germans live here. All get out. So they expelled all the Germans from most away across Europe. Like, there's a bunch of Germans all over the place. And yeah, basically that means that the border from Germany and Poland was meant to be somewhere like over here. Like, you know, Warsaw was a lot closer to the edge of the country. And as a result of, you know, basically East Germany had to accept Poland's borders because they were both puppet states of the USSR. And as a condition of East Germany and West Germany reunifying, Russia agreed not to, you know, intervene in any way as long as Germany accepted the new Poland border. Which, I mean, it's pretty cool of Russia to, you know, step in like that and save Poland, even though Poland was leaving their sphere of influence. But I mean, from a Polish perspective, but it means that there's a semi-bitterness amongst the, you know, Germans, like a little bit. It's probably going to die out as time goes on, because this border, it should be way over there in some people's eyes, or like way over there in some people's eyes, or way over like there in some people's eyes, because Prussia went a lot further, and those lands were just taken and converted, essentially, which is how, you know, like, I guess how human populations happen, but like, to be able to expel someone from your lands is like a crazy thing to do, really, and I know, like, it happens all over the place, but it doesn't mean it's not like a, ooh, that's kind of a crazy thing. So, again, in some generations, this will heal, and it won't be a problem, but there are some people alive today that are upset with this. Same with the German-Danish border. So, the very most northern state in Germany is called Schleswig-Holstein. I hope I got that right. But it's the most northernmost state in Germany, or Bundesland, and basically, it contains most of Schleswig and most of Holstein. And, yeah, basically, the reason this place is so interesting, because, again, you might be like, so, why you mentioned that, Soycat, is because a lot of people who live in this province, because it went back and forth between the Danish and Germans a few times, and the Danish aren't happy about it, the Germans aren't happy about it, they wish the border was further down here, the Germans wish the border was further up there, and basically, as a result of that, there's some Germans living in the Danish part, and there's some Danish living over here. So this state of Germany, this Bundesland of Germany, actually has like 4 official languages. It's like German, but then it's got Danish as an official language, and also they speak Frisian, which is a Dutch language, if I'm not mistaken, or it's mostly from the Netherlands. And it's just like a fun little fact that, like, you know, they've got lots of languages going on here, and also some people I read about it on, like, you know, like German subreddits are still bitter about this border, like, oh, let's go take the rest of Schleswig. And a fun little fact you might not have been aware of. So with that said, I think I just spent 24 minutes talking about the borders of Germany, but that just goes to show, like, I tried to skim over that pretty quickly. I was like, you know what, just zoom. But there is so many fascinating things about borders, because they have to be drawn between 2 countries, and as a result, 2 people, and they have to take into account so many different factors that you just get these weird situations where, like, if you live in the UK, or you live in the US, or you live in, like, I know, like a country where borders aren't, you know, pretty far away from you. Like even if you just live in the center of Germany or the center of France, you don't come across borders very often. But for, you know, especially if you live in most of the population centers of Germany, a border is usually just a part of life for you because there's one not too far from your house, and that's something fascinating to me that maybe is to you too. So thank you very much for watching Geography of Toy Cat. Man, I know some people are like, you know, you gotta cut down these video lengths, but apparently they get longer and longer because I just want to tell you things. So thank you very much for watching. Reminder to check out today's sponsor. It's Toy Cat's Amazon link. If you buy Amazon Prime, I think I get $3. It might be less than $3 now. It was $3 last time I checked, and I'm just gonna believe it's $3 still. And wouldn't you love to give me? Maybe I'm actually. I don't think I meant to say I get paid for that. So just check it out because Amazon's nice. So goodbye. Second channel. Don't care.